Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove and he is Sam Mulliner and he's coming to you twice this week. Christmas has come early. We'll be back later in the week with the final episode for now of Just Take Three. But today I've invited Sam on to talk about the fans' footballer of the year. Yes, it's that time of year, ladies and gentlemen, where we are running again the vote across all our titles here at Reach PLC. We have one Newcastle United player in the running for the national award of Fans Footballer of the Year. We also have four players nominated for the Newcastle United side of the competition. Sam, welcome back to the podcast. You well?
Yeah, in good form, thank you. Yes, Christmas is in the air. We've got an advent calendar down there, and it's not mine; it's my child's. But it's all good. And yeah, Just Take Three, the finale coming soon. But yeah, we've got to have round off the year with a good old survey and vote.
We certainly do. And the link for you guys to vote on both categories will be in the podcast description box. So click on that and help Anthony Gordon win the national award, even though it might not be deserved. More on that in a moment. But I do pick as well from the four nominees for the club vote, which we'll get into in a second. But before we do that, Sam, let's just talk about the situation at Newcastle United. Defeat to Brentford 4-2. Wasn't brilliant, particularly in the second half. We have Leicester in a few days' time. What are your thoughts on Eddie Howe and the direction of the club at the moment?
I'm concerned. I was fully aware of Brentford's strong home record going into that game, but I was quite surprised on just how lacklustre and poor we were in that second half because Brentford weren't a team, particularly at home. Brentford that weren't going to go and low block us. They would come out and play, which they did. Error strung defensively. I mean, just some of their goals were just grim. Umbermo in the shop window, looking why the fans seem to be on the side of Umbermo to solve our right wing issues. But yeah, really disappointed actually. I thought we'd win there because of them not coming to low block us, but. Yeah, that second half was gravely concerning. The defence was of huge concern. Sven Botman can't come back quick enough, and it just goes to show, as well as right wing, we do need that long term partner now for Botman on the other side of centre half. It's concerning, and like you say, Leicester isn't a foregone conclusion now. Then the cup game, which is huge, because all of a sudden that's looking like our best avenue for European football this season, potentially, which of course was Howe's remit. Look, it does come back down to PSR and not being able to strengthen properly with quality players, but some of the performances can't excuse that. So is Howe in trouble? It's a big month ahead.
Yep, certainly. So let us know in the comments what you think. It is a big 10 days or so, as Sam says, with the Brentford Cup game following the game against Leicester City at St James's Park this Saturday. But we'll get into the main part of today's show. And like I say, it's Fans Footballer of the Year. Sponsored, this podcast is by NordVPN. You can click the link in the podcast description box to get your very special discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. Keep yourself protected when you're using public Wi-Fi. And there's a host of other benefits. And if you've thought about doing it and you haven't done it yet, please do it now because you are helping support the podcast. You really, really are. I can't thank you enough. If you've already done it, it's a win-win situation. You protect yourself and you help us keep the podcast going. Keep it going for free as well for you guys, which we always want to be doing. But thank you very much. If you have signed up, if you haven't, you know what to do. Fans Football of the Year then, Sam. We'll start with the four nominations from Newcastle United. And we'll start with Mr. Anthony Gordon. 6 goals in all competitions, 6 assists from January to May. And then so far this season, 3 goals and 1 assist. I said last season I felt he was arguably Newcastle's best player when in full flow. I know Isak scored a boatload of goals. That's why he's on this list of nominations as well. But for me, Anthony Gordon last season was probably the most important player for me. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he was, and that's why he's been. That's why he's up for the national vote, I guess. Obviously this is across the whole of 2024, so you kind of half of last season, and which was very good. Finished the season broadly strongly. There was a couple of bumps in the road, of course, at like Palace and places like that, but we finished the season broadly very well. To get seventh, despite all the injuries, and Gordon was the main constant, really, wasn't he? Did so much good work down that left-hand side, being able to take players on, winning so many fouls, cutting inside, scoring goals, and yeah, it was a real breakthrough season for him, wasn't it? Got himself into that England squad for a major tournament and was heavily underutilized by Gareth Southgate. Um, Mixed bag so far this season. When he's good, he's very good, but it didn't quite click. There was rumours of his head possibly being turned, which was quashed after thankfully signing that new contract at Newcastle. So he's ours for the long term. Yeah, look, he's thoroughly deserving of a place in this list and in the national list as well, which I hope he wins. Toon Polls is smashing it as always in trying to rig a vote. So yeah, Reach PLC are susceptible. There's some things NordVPN can't prevent, and
Yes.
that's one of them.
Well, if
Unfortunately,
Gordon
depending on how
manages
you
to
look at
win
it.
this, it'll be the third year running that a Newcastle United players won the national vote. I think we do have to pay special thanks to Toon Pros, who has retweeted, has put this out on other social channels as well, and Newcastle United fans are voting in their numbers at the moment. I think it was Mo Salah that was probably leading the way, not Cole Palmer, who would actually be my pick. But we'll get into the national vote in a moment. But
I would actually agree with you on that.
yeah, well, but see the list in a moment. But on Gordon, what's his biggest asset? What is it for you that really gets you out of your seat when you watch him play?
Directness. And obviously he's blessed with a tremendous amount of pace, and being able to carry the ball and being so direct forces the wing back or one of the centre backs to make a decision, and 9 times out of 10 they either have to bring him down or he's gone. So yeah, his directness for me, when all things are going well and the press is being utilised effectively, he's so key, because he's often first on the scene in closing down the goalkeeper or the defender. But yeah, his directness for me is what does it. Is what I'm a big fan of. There's no so wingers can sometimes get carried away with step overs and skills. Obviously, Alan St Maximin was the kind of the other end of the spectrum, wasn't he? Where he was all bells and whistles, wasn't he? There's nothing really about that. There's nothing really flashy in Gordon's style of play, which I kind of like. I loved Maxi as well. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I like the directness of Gordon, and he can be so effective in drawing fouls and getting us into key positions. Obviously, it would be better were our set piece record a bit more positive than it has been of late. I know we may have got the odd one or two of late, but before then it was pretty grim from set plays. But yeah, and it just goes to show when he has to be employed down that right hand side, he has got the ability to whip in across Keith Gillespie style as well.
Yep, that goal that Newcastle scored against Arsenal, Isak with a header, superb cross by Anthony Gordon. I mean, he has embarrassed some fullbacks, some top fullbacks, hasn't he, in his time at Newcastle? Kyle Walker,
Kyle Walker,
one
yeah, is the one that
example.
springs to mind. Kyle Walker
Um,
doesn't have a great record against us, really, because St Maximum used to have him on toast.
But it shows you what you can do. You know, if you've got a bit of pace about you and you are direct, then even the best might struggle against you. Do you think Anthony Gordon has been a little bit hard done by in terms of Newcastle United not having that third striker that Eddie Howe trusts to use when maybe Isak is injured, Wilson is injured, or one of them's off form? And he's played a lot of games up top. And he's also, as you mentioned there, played quite a few games out on the right. We know where he's best. It's out on the left. That's his best position. Do you think he's been, I don't know if held back's the right word, but I think he's certainly been impacted by having to fill in, especially up top, you know, in recent months?
Yeah, I don't like him playing down the middle whatsoever. It was quite interesting because I saw an interview with Howe a month or two ago, saying that he was bought to play on the right, which I found incredibly interesting. And it was only hence, and that would explain the reason why we signed someone like Harvey Barnes, who was bought to play on the left, cut inside, and finish as he does. Barnes more has moments off the bench though, doesn't he? Which is, it doesn't really seem to perform as well when starting. Obviously at the weekend, awful error for Brentford's second goal, but they made up for it in quick time as well, scoring at the right end straight after. But yeah, his best position, of course, is on the left. Of course, it is now. That's glaringly obvious, and that comes back to a point first highlighted on this podcast, really, from Simon Bird. Will Harvey Barnes have to make way in order for us to possibly sign a right winger? We don't know the situation with PSR. I can't keep up. I saw a stupid rumor online the other day saying that now Gordon has signed a new deal that affects PSR, so we have to kind of sell someone. But I'm just getting sick to the back teeth of it.
Yeah, you, me, and I think everyone watching this, but there will be some truth in that report, in that rumor, because he will have had a pay rise, he might have had a signing on fee, so that will have to be taken into account, and that's maybe a reason why the whispers and the feelers are that Newcastle do have to sell in January if they're going to buy someone.
How
I
long does
did
this go
chuckle
on
though.
for? I wouldn't like, our spending has not been excessive for ages.
No, but I think obviously it goes in a cycle, doesn't it? So hopefully this is the kind of maybe the final cycle in the summer. We will really see them
So
power
we're
through.
allowed one transfer window where we can spend in 3 years.
I mean, I'm not gonna try and pretend that I understand the ins and outs of it. I don't think many people do. I think if you have access to the books, you might do, but even then, given the summer, maybe you don't. It's a horrible minefield. But on
It
Gordon,
is, because it's we're not alone. You look at Aston Villa; they're going to be in the exact same problem. They're not going to qualify for the Champions League again this season, so they're going to be in the exact same hole that we are, and they're going to have to start selling another one of those best players. When they qualified for the Champions League, they had to sell Douglas Luiz. Meanwhile, Manchester United, who are mid-table, have outlaid a tremendous amount of money for A, chasing Dan Ashworth for 5 months, B, getting Amarim's coaching staff and himself to Old Trafford, and C, paying the compensation for Ten Hag for Ruud van Nistelrooy, who obviously has landed on his feet and we face next at Leicester. And he only went and signed to be assistant manager at Manchester United in the summer. So they've paid excessive amounts on new contracts, paying off old contracts, and they're in tremendous amount of debt, and they can still spend whatever they want.
I
What's
think.
going on there?
I mean, again, I don't know the ins and outs, but I think that might start to catch up with him, and if it doesn't,
Good.
then it certainly should do. But on Gordon, you mentioned the new deal, the new contract, thoroughly deserved. A lot of people have said
Yeah.
he didn't deserve it because his head was turned by Liverpool, and in the month or so, 6 weeks before he signed the deal, he hadn't really found the form of last season. But in my head, I was like, well, we're there. He was the most important player last season. Newcastle United should reward that. And then we're going, well, what about Isak? What about other players? Yeah, but Gordon's contract was running down, really. He only had a year and a half left on
Yeah,
it.
that was odd, wasn't it? That
Yeah,
it wasn't really like when he first signed from Everton. It wasn't like this because with new signings, you're so used to say, "Oh, 5 year deal," and then when Chelsea started getting going with ludicrous contracts. I mean, how long is left on Nicholas Jackson's contract?
27 years.
Something like that. And there's another problem. What a tremendous underdog story that is. The revival of Chelsea up into third place, having spent 1.2 billion. Jesus,
I mean,
honestly.
fair play to the manager for sorting that mess out because there's a lot of players there that he has to kind of maneuver. But on Gordon, the contract, I mean, it thoroughly
Thoroughly
deserved, in my
deserved.
opinion.
Yeah, thoroughly deserved, and I loved his celebration against Liverpool to kind of put that point around his head being turned. Yeah, tremendous. Love that. That was to all you journalists. Uh,
Scandal. Don't tar with all the same brush. I think
no, I know. I was
with
just seeing if you would bite.
that, it's his boyhood club. Like, yes, of course he's going to be interested. If Newcastle as well were looking around at the end of that June period and thinking we do need to sell, then you can't really blame him for maybe being a little bit despondent with everything that went on, plus the England situation. So he got a lot of stick. He got a lot of stick at the start of the season, which I thought was totally unwarranted.
Well, he started slow, didn't he?
He did, but that's just football. He's still, I think, arguably the most important player to this Newcastle United side, and I think he does need to step up a level. Hopefully he has a good end to the year and then he can carry that into 2025. But some of the stick he got was totally uncalled for. It's good to see him starting to add a few goals again to his game. Obviously, like you say, he scored against Liverpool. Needs to do more. But I think the key to that, keep him on the left. And this is the key question, Sam. Are we now at a point where Eddie Howe just has to stick with Anthony Gordon on the left, stop trying to move him about to get other players in the team, i.e. Joe Linton on the left or Harvey Barnes on the left? Just stick with Anthony Gordon on the left, because an Anthony Gordon on the wing, on the left, is so much more beneficial to Newcastle United than any other player that you can like push into a place at the cost of Gordon.
Possibly. He should have had a couple against Liverpool, by the way, as well. One of them glaring miss. I don't know. As long as is that forward line should be a lot more fluid than what it is anyway. Barnes can't play on the right. It's weird because some of the things Harvey Barnes has done for us, he should be like held in really high esteem, but I just don't get that feeling.
Well, when he signed, I honestly thought he was ahead of Anthony Gordon for that left wing position, and then he picked up the injury against Sheffield United and was out for God knows how long. And in the summer, I said I still think he's going to prove his worth. I still think he's got a lot to offer Newcastle United. But there's going to be an episode out on Wednesday morning with Simon Bird, and it's going to be titled, Newcastle United's missed opportunities, because I think that's the story of the season so far. And one of the big missed opportunities is Harvey Barnes, because he was handed a chance to hold down that left wing position ahead of Anthony Gordon.
Yeah,
and every
but
time
he
he
scored
started,
5 goals. He scored more than Gordon. How can you say it's a missed opportunity?
Because we're sitting here still saying Anthony Gordon is first choice. We're sitting here saying Joe Linton times this season has been ahead of him. Harvey Barnes, yes, has scored 4 or 5 goals, but he's not seized the opportunity. And it seems really weird, but I've seen a lot of people say this. Aaron Stokes has said it. I've seen a few of the podcast channels say it. People at Leicester always said all he does is score goals and create assists. And in my head, I was like, well, that's all we want. But actually, his all-round play isn't that great, and it's a little bit detrimental to the side. But for me, he is the biggest missed opportunity this season, because we're now sitting here saying, "Oh, he's more effective off the bench," but he had a chance to make that left wing position his own, and he's just not taking it.
Well, to go back then, when we first signed Barnes, I was tremendously underwhelmed.
Really?
Yes, because I didn't think he was better than what we'd got, or like to the point you just said. All he does is, yes, his numbers were good, but on Uri in general, I don't think he's quick for a winger. He's not slow, but he's not. He doesn't have that burst of pace that Gordon does. Or even like Almiron does. I don't think he's fast for a winger. To be honest, I thought it was. I thought that'd be like a classic Aston Villa signing, Harvey Barnes. I was surprised that they went for Diaby. I thought we should have got Diaby. This was back at the time. I thought we should have got Diaby, and I thought Barnes would go to someone like Aston Villa. But obviously, it hasn't worked out that way. But like what Barnes has done for us, like, he should be held in a lot higher esteem than what he is. Because saving us against Luton, that comeback against West Ham, tremendous goal to hit the winner at Wolverhampton. Scored against Spurs, of course. But there's just something, I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't quite put my finger on what it is.
I think Newcastle United fans and football fans in general always want to kind of look for someone to vent at, and it's probably Harvey Barnes, because he cost
To
the best
vent
part.
at? No, that's Sean Longstaff. Let's not
Well,
get carried
yeah,
away.
but the best part of 40 million. And I think actually it's probably the other story of Newcastle season so far is his biggest issue. It's consistency. He's not consistent enough.
No, he's not.
So that is an issue. But yeah, Gordon, the man on the left, he is the first name that we've talked about. The second man nominated is Alexander Isak. So from January to May, he scored 13 goals. This season, he scored 7 in 15. I mean, he's just an unbelievable centre forward, isn't he?
Could have had more numbers as well had the service been better, especially at the start of the season. Yeah, he's an incredible striker, and if we're not careful, we'll be losing him.
Well, he also could have more if he actually put the ball in the back of the net once he starts rounding goalkeepers.
Well, yeah, that was a bit of an issue, but I mean, he's not the first player to do that. I mean, my
He's done
word,
it twice this season.
strikers
Twice.
miss chance. Yeah, what was the other one?
Don't ask what it was, but there was another one. I know there was another one. Someone in the
Um,
comments will tell me what it is. But there was he's definitely done it before this season where
Right,
he's
so you
rounded the
just
keeper.
you just made the big point last week of you said you do your research, but okay, fine. Isak, yeah, I love the guy. I'm desperate for him to stay, but I'm very aware of this possibility on how our season is turning out. That yeah, and he has a lot of potential suitors. Whether or not they can go up to the asking price I have in mind, which I think the club. I mean, it's higher than what the club's is reportedly, but yeah, he's just a class above, and he's dangerously good. I mean, I was laughed at by a lot of fans outside of the Newcastle fan base when I went on Sky Sports talking about us signing Isak, saying he could be our Aguero, as in not the same type of player as Aguero, but the big striker following a takeover that can go on and get us 20 goals a season consistently, and to be like that world class striker. And you know, this is the thing about when you kind of highlight young players from across Europe. It's not about what they've achieved already; it's what they can potentially achieve in their future. So he hadn't achieved overly that much over at Sociedad, but the potential was always there, and the likeness towards Thierry Henry was always there, and he's shown that in spades. He's such a special player. Yeah, well, I'm just desperate for him because say we sell him for 120 million, which is reportedly what the club want. I would be closer to 150, to be honest. Are you going to get anyone like him for that much money these days? You're going to have to, you know, it's going to have to be a Paul Mitchell special to really get anyone close to that level of player. It was our kind of landmark signing in a way, because it was our record signing. He's just he's a game changer. He can do pretty much anything. You say he's not good in the air, but he scores some belting headers. Yeah, that I just think he's head and shoulders. When people talk about, oh, who's the best striker since Shearer, who's the best striker after Shearer, because obviously Shearer will always be number one. Isak is that, and Isak is really the only one that has the potential to eclipse Alan Shearer were he to stay for that duration of time.
Yeah, which just won't happen. Even if Newcastle got into Europe this season, I think you always need to then go the level above. You then need to get Champions League football. You then need to become a title challenging side. So, unfortunately, I do think his time on Tyneside is very limited. But that's what happens when you're a fantastic player, and Newcastle are right on the start of their journey, unfortunately. But yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. I think 150 million pounds is the least you would ask for him because he is that good. For me, it's his footwork. Like, he's a good finisher, great finisher. He's got pace about him, but the way he is with the ball at his feet, it's like watching Peter Beardsley and Messi all mixed into one. Like, it's like Velcro to the boots. It's absolutely superb watching him, and he's got tricks about him. The defenders don't know which way to go. Yeah, he's an absolutely superb player. I mean, any goals that stand out for you this year, in particular? And I'm putting you on the spot
Well, I
there.
just want to add a point. Like, even when he wasn't playing well, he was still scoring goals. Because when he got like at the start of that run where he got like what 4 in 4, something like that. I mean, the first three of those games he didn't play well, but he still scored. So yeah, the goals that stand out. Well, I mean, look, last week against Liverpool, absolute thunderbolt. What a finish that is. He can score goals like that. His header against Arsenal, something completely different. Yeah, he's got so much in his locker, and still quite a lot of improvement to be had. He's still relatively young in footballing terms, and you know his peak years aren't too far away. Hopefully they'll be at Newcastle, but I just I worry they won't be.
Yeah, I enjoyed the goal against Brentford as well. That diving header I thought was a really nice goal. And the Arsenal one as
Yeah,
well is another one that stands out. But of course, that Liverpool Thunderbolt, absolutely fantastic. I was watching the game actually with Dwight Gale, and I said to him, "Have you finished like that before, Dwight?" He said, "Not a chance that I've hit a ball that hard." What was it, 70 miles an hour?
yes, yes. So yeah, he kept to the speed limit. So it just goes to show Alexander is responsible. How was Dwight Gale? Because we haven't.
Lovely chap.
Is he?
Absolutely lovely chap. Really nice. Some great stories, some great tales, and just a really down to earth and nice chap.
He did. I don't know whether he still does, but when he was at Derby, he lived around about 15 minutes away from me. But I don't know if he still does. I very much doubt he's playing for Hibernian whilst living in Staffordshire.
It'd be quite the commute, wouldn't it? But
Just
yeah,
a bit.
currently playing for Hibs. That's Celtic over the weekend. I'm not sure how that went, but I suspect it didn't go very well. But yeah, Isak, absolutely wonderful. And I think you mentioned there's still levels to go because he scored a boatload of goals, but especially this season, he's missed chances that you would think an Isak in 2 or 3 years, when he's maybe tailored his game a little bit more, would be putting away with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
Of course, strikers missed chances. Alan Shearer missed chances. It happens, but there's been quite a few where you just think, how has he missed that? Like he's brilliant. How has he done that? But obviously, that's just football. Talk about contracts and what have you. Seemed to be a bit of a distraction anyhow. Kind of laid a challenge down to him and said, well, it's got to work both ways. If they want a
Well,
new deal, he's got to start scoring on the pitch. And to be fair to Isak, he rose to that challenge, didn't he? Because he hit the 4-4 streak.
yeah, I didn't quite understand the talk of a new deal because he's still got years left.
3.5 years left, I think it is,
Yeah,
of
well, yeah,
2028,
because
wasn't it?
unlike Gordon, this signing was one that was a real a long term deal, wasn't it, when he first signed? So, I couldn't quite understand why there was a desperation for. I mean, obviously, it's always nice when players sign new deals, especially your big players. But I didn't see the overall fuss unless his wage is way down the list, which I would be very surprised were that the case. When you bring in a record signing, their wage packet usually follows suit, doesn't it?
It
So
does, but I wonder whether he's seen the contract for Big Joe, Bruno, Gordon, and maybe somewhere someone's in his ear saying you need to get up to their level of a wage packet. We don't know what the ins and outs of the conversations were, or the speculation. But I did enjoy how the national media then suddenly made it into a big deal. He's not signing a new deal. They're not going to get him on a new contract. He's off.
the
It's like three and a
constant
half years.
narrative of him going to Arsenal is just tiresome. And Arsenal ain't going to pay. Arsenal can't afford 120 mil. No chance. So that's not going to happen, I'm afraid, Gooners. So whenever I see it on Twitter, I always just quote tweet it and say something about Newcastle signing Saka
Yeah, and you try and get a bit of a
because
bite.
I think each is as likely scenario as the other. It's not going to happen in
There
this
is that.
world of PSR.
There is the tale that Saka was a boyhood Newcastle fan, or was
His dad is a Newcastle fan.
there we go.
I think there is a degree of fondness there. He's quite aware of Newcastle games in the past. But I think his heart is pretty tied at Arsenal for the
Just
rest of
show
the
him the
time being.
bridges, and he'll be up here in a flash. But
Well, that's right.
Alexander Isak, so there we go. Let us know what you think of Isak. Do you think he's going to sign a new deal? Do you care right now? The club are very relaxed about it, and I'm sure the majority of you guys are as well. Third nomination, Mr. Fabian Schär. Last season, Sam, unplayable. Brilliant. Absolutely superb. I have to say the last couple of months or so, he's looking a bit shaky. He's kind of looking like the Fabian Schär, I think, that we saw in the Bruce mistakes in his game. Pace is gone. Decision making, he's a little bit rash in the challenge. Poor against Brentford. He still has moments. Liverpool, absolutely brilliant. But for me, out of this list, Bruno's the other one on the list. I think, unfortunately, he does probably come last. I think if it was just based on last season, he'd be further up the list, in my opinion. But I do think we're seeing the beginning of the end for Fabian Schär, but let's be positive. Brilliant season he had last season.
Yeah, he was absolutely immense with the goals he scored as well, like, away at Forest. Him and Bruno, the only reason we won that game, really. Yeah, tremendous. Look, we've swooned over Fabian Schär many times over the past couple of years, haven't we? With his, one of the biggest bargains in Premier League history, 3 million from Rafa Benitez signing. Has had so many ups and downs whilst at the club. I agree. This is the beginning of the end for him, but there's no, age comes to us all, Andrew. It's fine whether you're a professional athlete or not. Would he stay an extra year to be a bit of a squad player? Possibly. Would he finish his career here? Yeah, maybe. But it's his long-term position will probably be on the bench, as there's no secret about our chase for Mark Gehi, is there? So, and whoever our next centre back that's brought in, now Lloyd Kelly has filled Paul Dummett's role, will be the long-term partner for Sven Botman, because he's the reason, his absence is the reason our defence is so shaky at the moment. Yes, Byrne can do a very, very good job, but Botman is that level above. Botman is an elite centre back. He will eventually go on to be one of the world's best centre halves if he can come back to be the player from that ACL injury. But Fabian, last season, tremendous goals. Obviously, he's got a couple this season as well, Liverpool, which was fortuitous. If I was a Liverpool fan, obviously I know a few because they're everywhere. Kelleher should have been collecting that. There's no two ways about it. But you got to gamble, and Fabian did. You got to be in it to win it, and we got a deserved point, I feel, that night. Thanks to Fabian Schär and him being there to pick up the pieces. And yeah, his goal against Wolves was deflected, but we needed that goal to get the breakthrough. He's always got that in his locker. He's just a tremendous player. He can lose his head though at times when the going does get tough. It's been relatively smooth sailing for him under Howe over the past couple of years, but this season has been a bit of a I don't know how you describe it. I was going to say downward spiral, which would probably be a touch harsh, but it's not overly inspiring so far away from the big games. But could he be one of the ones that Shearer questioned the attitude of at the weekend? It's all right turning up for the big games, but your bread and butter ones where you should be, if you're going to be successful qualifying for the Champions League every year, turning up and going to do a professional job, getting the win. Could he be one of them? I would probably say so. But look, let's not detract from that. He deserves to be in this list. Yes, I agree he'd be fourth in the list. But he was fantastic last season. Has had his moments this season. But he's probably, were it not for a PSR world, he'd probably be out of the team now.
Yeah, great pass out of the ball. I thought he was really good against Liverpool, spraying the passes left and right, especially with Anthony Gordon on the left. But yeah, Brentford, him and Dan Burn wasn't a great look. And I mean, Shearer
There's
could have
been a
been talking
couple like
about.
that. There's been a couple of games like that. Fulham was, oh my word!
But
Fulham
it was. I mean, it wasn't a kind of a copy of the goal Jimenez scored, but the issue of backing off was the same. And I
Yeah,
do get concerned it's going to be a bit of a running theme for the rest of the season because
Brighton as well. We seem to be getting done by Route One all the
yeah,
time. Which, when you think you've got 6'7" Dan Burn there, you just think we should be swallowing that up.
yeah.
Yeah, it's part of a long list of issues at the club at the moment, isn't it? But
But we will go on to our fourth nomination, Bruno Guimarães, of course, now the captain. Last season from January to May, 6 goals, 6 assists. But more importantly to some, and more impressively to some, no yellow card from the 13th of January. Picked up a yellow card against Man City. I think he needed one more and he'd be suspended for maybe 2 or 3 games. Can't quite remember how many games he would have missed. And he went on this amazing run of not picking up a single yellow card. And it made him so much better because he
Yeah.
was focused. He knew he couldn't afford to do a rash challenge, to mouth off to the referee, to leave a bit of an arm in. And he became, I think, for that period of time until the deadline ended, I think that was his best run in the Newcastle United side.
Yeah.
He was absolutely
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah. Oh my word, yeah, he was absolutely sensational, and there were times where he was like, don't get me wrong, he was still getting, for want of a better phrase, he was still getting stuck in, and he wasn't shirking challenges. There was a couple of occasions where you think, no, Bruno, don't go in for that. Yeah, and possibly running the risk of a yellow card. He still had that bite in his play, but it showed a lot of a great deal more maturity in his game. Which, maybe would have helped him get that captain's armband. I mean, I've got to be honest, I don't really like him as captain. Not just because of his heads or tails game, but I would. I mean, it's all right having a leadership roles, and the armband doesn't define a leader. I just think there was possibly better suited candidates in there because it's clear we want to move on from Trippier, which I don't wholly agree with, to be honest. I think when Trippier's on the pitch, he should have the armband. And I still think he should be first choice. It's not a slant on Tino Livramento, who I'm a big fan of. I just think Trippier has still got a lot to offer. But yeah, Bruno, he's still one of the best players I've ever seen in black and white. Simple as that. I don't understand why he comes in for a bit of criticism. Yes, he's had the odd poor game. But newsflash, they all have. They all
I
have.
think the question or criticism is that if Sean Longstaff did some of the stuff that Bruno does, there would be loads of criticism on Sean Longstaff. And I think he does get away with a lot more, but then obviously he's a much better caliber of player than Sean Longstaff. So this season, though, he's been below par. He's not been himself. I think actually in the last two games, particularly against Liverpool, it was the first time, and I mentioned this on the Monday show, that it was the first time that I'd seen him step up properly into that captain's role, in my opinion. Like the little
Against
things he was
Liverpool.
doing. Yeah, against Liverpool. It was a real captain's performance.
Well, I thought the midfield against Liverpool was absolutely sensational.
This is the bigger point with Bruno this season. It's the dilemma about the midfield. Newcastle have a really good record when Sean Longstaff's in the team, but of course we want Tonali in the team. So the midfield three, is it a case that you bring Tonali in and put him in that 6 and Bruno gets a little bit more advanced and that's the way forward?
Yes. I mean, the amount of nonsense I spout, I must have mentioned it on here plenty of times before. Tonali has to be in the 6, and that could add to it the fact that Bruno he's played in every position in that midfield this season. He's been put on the left, put on the right of it, and then in the 6 as well. There needs to be some kind of formulaic stability, but against Liverpool, the midfield was tremendously fluid, and they gelled so well together. And it was probably the first time that's happened actually with the personnel in there, because we all said, okay, who's your strongest midfield? And at the start of the season, people said, right, Joe Linton, Bruno, Tonali. 3 world-class, like that on paper is one of the best midfield threes in Europe. But it hasn't worked out like that. Joe Linton could be another one that you question. Away from home this season, he's been appalling, broadly speaking. But in the home games, he's played well. Tonali has to be in the 6, and Bruno on the right-hand side of the 3 for me, which is where he played when he first signed for us. He has more of a natural ability to get forward than that of Tonali, because that's not really Tonali's game. And then you can have, a Joe Linton or a Joe Willock there on the left of the 3. That for me should be where the selection dilemma is, because I remember that season we finished 4th. Joe Linton was in and out of the team, and he was sometimes on the left of the 3 in midfield. He was sometimes on the left wing. Obviously, Gordon arrived in the January. Joe Linton didn't walk into that first team picture. Yeah, it's a real dilemma. But Bruno, for me, he's still a world class player. Obviously, he's going to carry on being. He's another one that could quite easily go. I know Man City are definitely sniffing around him, but the time for them to have bought him surely would have been when the release clause was active. So again, are they going to try and undercut that? And the club have got to hold firm. And this is where, if we do have to sell one of the big stars, it's not something I really want to think about or contemplate because I still want them here. But obviously, understanding the business nature of PSR and how sickening it is, this is where the club have got to be better sellers because we're not good at selling. We sold Alan St. Maximin way too cheap, and we shouldn't be selling Bruno for under what the release clause was. Again, Bruno is in excess of £100 million player. Easy. And City will probably undercut and try and offer 70 or 80. It was just should be told to go away. But look, he's still a world-class player. He's still one of the best players we've ever had in the midfield in black and white. He's a phenomenal personality. He cares. His heart is in the city and in the club, and so invested in it. We couldn't. He's an emotional guy, and it's a perfect fit for a team like Newcastle, for a city like Newcastle, for a fan base like Newcastle, because he gets it and he cares and he loves it so much. He's probably dead proud to be captain, and he's probably feeling it. I saw his interview after the Brentford game. He's fuming. He's livid. He's gutted. And that's what you want to be. Show a bit of fight. And he's having the odd poor game here and there, but still not to detract. He's such a high class operator, and the stuff he does is like that goes without notice. Really, he's just a phenomenal talent.
Great passer of the ball. I think that's probably his greatest attribute. We need to see a few more goals from him. He hasn't scored yet this season. He's got a couple of assists. Of course, one against Liverpool for that Isak Thunderbolt. But yeah, the captaincy, as you mentioned, interesting move. Is he the right person for the captain's armbands? At the moment, you would argue probably not, but we can have more performances like it was against Liverpool.
He's not. But have they done that to maybe give him that to kind of entice him to stay, to properly stay at the club for the long term? Because this is the PSR man just needs to do one, because we shouldn't be having to contemplate selling one of these players when we're trying to be ambitious.
Yeah.
It's such a contradiction of everything sport is supposed to be competitive.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree with you. So out of those four then, Gordon, Isak, Schär and Bruno, who gets your nod?
It's close between. So obviously this is on 2024, isn't it? 2024 form. So you've got to separate who you think is the best player outright, who you think is your favourite. For me, it's between Gordon and Isak. You have to say on balance that you would give Gordon the nod for 2024.
There we go. Make sure you vote, guys. Let us know who gets your pick out of those four. Just going to bring up on the screen now the nominees for the National Award. So I'll read through them and we'll quickly just, obviously we're encouraging you guys to vote.
How the hell is Andre Onana been nominated?
That was actually my first question, because he is absolutely pitiful. However, let me read through the rest of the nominations. Phil Foden, Jude Bellingham, Rodri, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard, Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Andre Onana, Ollie Watkins, Anthony Gordon, Cole Palmer, and Khadija Shaw. For me, if I'm removing my Newcastle United bias, I think Cole Palmer wins that for me. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. Rodri obviously picked up his injury, but he was unplayable at times last season. I think Bellingham is overhyped. Foden, another one. Bellingham, sorry.
Bellingham. I have to stand up for a fellow West Midlander here. Jude Bellingham is not overhyped. Look, the season, the end of the season he had for Real Madrid as well this calendar year is phenomenal. He had an amazing debut year at Real Madrid. That just doesn't happen to nobody. He's a phenomenal player, and
he's a very talented player. But I just think sometimes I think there's questions maybe with his attitude. I think he's a superb player. The ability's there, but is he player of the year? I'm not sure he is.
I don't think he's far away.
Foden is another one who's just
Is
doesn't
someone at
seem.
the MEN having tremendous bants in putting Andre Onana in?
Well, yeah, that was literally the question I asked, because he is just awful. I mean, they seem to do this, Manchester United, don't they? Barthez. Who else did they have? Bosnich. He was a Man United goalkeeper.
But Barthez was good. He was a World Cup winner, and yes, a bit eccentric, but he was still a very good goalkeeper. Onana was signed because he can kick a football.
Yeah, fair enough. Ollie Watkins, bag load of goals for Villa, hasn't quite happened this season. Virgil van Dijk.
Watkins is a guy that if he gets the service, he'll score. He's a archetype fox in the box. He's not going to be. He's like a Ruud van Nistelrooy type player. In the confines of the 18-yard box, he's lethal, but outside of that, doesn't do a great deal.
Virgil van Dijk, another one who I always think
Overhyped.
Gets properly overhyped. Great defender, but he's not.
It just goes to show the lack of quality world-class centre halves there have been in the last 5 years. Because if you look back, unfortunately, I say fortunately, at an age where you can remember when football was invented in 1992. People go on about the lists of best Premier League centre backs. All right, he'd just about make the top 10. He ain't trouble in the top 3 or top 5 for me.
I'm just looking. Well, yeah, I think many people would agree with you. I'm just looking quickly at Mo Salah's stats for 2024. A couple of injuries, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goals, a couple of assists. It's really this season which he's just hit the ground absolutely running, hasn't he? So that's probably got him into the list. But for me, he just can't look past Cole Palmer. He's just absolutely brilliant. 11 goals so far this season, 6 assists, 14 goals between January and May. I know a lot of those were penalties, but how Man City A let him go, and B, how Chelsea kind of just had a free run at him and nobody else decided they were going to take a punt on him. It looks like a bargain. I think it was only the top end of 20 odd million that he cost. Such a good player. Such a good player.
More than that.
I don't think it was.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, talk to me about Cole Palmer's abilities. Is he the man that you're going to pick for this award?
Yeah, just about. I think Bellingham is another one. Obviously, you can't overlook Rodri because he's won the Ballon d'Or. And the more I think about it, the more I'm inclined to go with Rodri, actually, because look at Manchester City without him.
And he won
what a massive difference. Ballon d'Or.
Yeah. The big award.
The more I'm talking, the more I'm inclined to go with Rodri, actually. But yeah, Cole Palmer, yeah, tremendous talent. And it's one of them where we always kind of knew that we always kind of knew the name and that he was kind of hotly touted, but for one reason or another, Pep just didn't really fancy sticking him in for a game. He'd rather look elsewhere. And obviously, he brought in a couple of players on the wing down the years to kind of keep him out of the side. But good insight from Chelsea, who they themselves have got rid of a lot of academy talents over the years. But this is what I mean. The clubs have to be good sellers.
And you are right. Cole Palmer cost Chelsea £42.5 million. So it wasn't quite
just a similar fee to Harvey Barnes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And we haven't mentioned Khadija Shaw, the Man City forward, who hit 21 goals last season in 18 appearances and has 9 in 9 so far this season. And she picked up a host of awards for last season's performances. FWA Women's Football of the Year, Super League Player of the Season, PFA Women's Player of the Year, PFA's Women's Player of the Year picked it up in August 2024. So tremendous talent. I'm surprised that she's the only woman on that list, actually, because there's a host of great players in the Super League. But I mean, you watch, obviously, you follow Newcastle's women's quite closely. Obviously to the next tier up, but that's obviously where they're aiming to be when it comes to the long-term future.
Yes, but there is obviously we've got another tier to go to the WSL, but within the WSL itself, there's almost like another tier. There's like a tier in between. So obviously you've got your elite teams, like Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, Brighton, there or thereabouts as well. And then you got a tier below that with the other sides in the WSL who are, you know, mid-table is a good season for them, like not going down. So you know, like Everton, even Liverpool, and we saw the gulf between Liverpool's side and our own side the other week. We've got Manchester United on Wednesday in the Women's League Cup, or tomorrow, as it's otherwise known. So yeah, there's a long way to go, a long way to go. So they'll get there, but it will still take time. And obviously, the last jump is the biggest jump, really. So whilst you know we're having this tremendous success and a lot of steps on the way, the steps are becoming big jumps now. So yeah, they'll get there eventually, though.
And in your time following women's football, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I've seen much of Schär at all. Have you come across Schär? Have you seen much of her for Man City?
Briefly, look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert, but because like I just focus on Newcastle, to be honest. So, but yeah, I've seen her a few times. Obviously, lethal, absolutely lethal. But yeah, in a few years, hopefully, we're talking about Newcastle's Alicia Body, because I feel she has the highest potential and the highest ceiling out of all of our squad, and I would put my house on her playing for the England Lionesses full team. Obviously, she played for the under-23s last week. I would put my house on her playing for the Lionesses at some point.
Fingers crossed. But I will put the link to the vote in the podcast description box for you guys to have your say. If you're voting in blind faith, it's Anthony Gordon. If you're going to be a little bit honest, it's probably Cole Palmer.
No, I'm
Maybe
disagreeing.
Rodri.
I'm going Rodri now.
You're going Rodri. There you go. So me and Sam disagree. I'm going Cole Palmer. I can understand the course for Rodri because he is absolutely brilliant.
Just
But
look
let
at
us know
what's
who
happened.
you've.
Let's look what happened to Man City without him.
Yeah,
Which is
I'm not arguing
incredible.
with you. I'm not arguing. But you could argue, where would Chelsea be without Cole Palmer?
Still spending billions, selling off hotels.
Yep, most probably. All within the rules, apparently. But yeah, hit that vote link in the podcast description box. Do vote. Do have your say. Get into the comments. Thank you to Sam for popping on and talking about the Fans Footballer of the Year podcast. Once again, a reminder, sponsored by NordVPN. There's a link in the podcast description box for a very special discount offer. What a wonderful Christmas present to get someone who might be a little bit afraid about the hackers and scammers out there. But thanks to Sam, as always. We'll be back later in the week. For the meantime, have a good Tuesday, Wednesday, and rest of the week.